Welcome, everybody, to the show, and happy Bulge Day to everybody. It is indeed December 16th, and this is Counter Clipping Show number 202. So we will put another one in the books. Reminder to folks who may or may not tune into the entire show, there will be no live shows next week. I'll see if I can get some videos scheduled to post in the meantime, because next week is Christmas. So I hope that everybody has a good holiday in case I forget to say that at the end of the show, which is incredibly likely. We are clipping SPI and Joe Balkowski's Atlantic Wall. This is actually partially clipped already and it's fully punched, and there may be some counters missing. So I've decided to take a look at it and see what's going on. We will not be finishing this evening. I have finally finished Advanced Pacific Theater of Operations literally earlier today because I'm like, I can't fucking clip this again during the show. This is not going to be okay. So anyway, we are drinking the Glenlivet Caribbean Reserve, bottled at 40% and aged in rum casks for some period of time. I don't think it really says rum flavor-wise as much as, say, the Balvenie Caribbean cask does. But frankly, I think Balvenie is better than Glenlivet anyway, but Glenlivet's fine, don't get me wrong. In any case, we've got close to half a bottle here to go through. We won't be finishing that tonight either. So, our topic tonight is Wargaming's favorite battles. The obvious ones, but also the less obvious ones, hopefully. Let me put the ticker up, which has not been updated, but we don't really have anything new, so there's that. We have some news and stuff to go through this evening, but before we get started on all of that, I'll remind everybody that there are a ton of links to help the show out in the video description. I have gotten rid of that huge stack of social media links from the descriptions and replaced it with one Linktree link, but the support links to things like the Patreon and that kind of stuff and the Noble Knight affiliate link are still in the video description. So check all that stuff out. It helps out the show. Another way to help the show out is via super chats and super stickers. That is greatly appreciated. And it will also highlight your comment so that I can respond to it. So I would like to thank everybody who is doing that, and we'll talk about this in another minute. So in the meantime, before we get into it, let's give a special shout out to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, as well as to our good friends at Noble Knight Games. Without the patrons' support, it would not be possible to keep doing this. You'll have noticed some stuff that's a little different in the background. I will talk about that in a minute as well. So before we get any further, however, let's say hello to Aaron Dennis, Advanced Squad Leader Spotting Round, B. Goebel, Bert Matus, Chet Bell, Chris Clark, Daniel Silverthorne, Dave Poirier, David Imperato, David Zell, DJ Flippy, Ed Holtzman, Eric Goebel, Gregory Campagna, Groundyard Rich, HUN644 New, the legend himself, Fucko, is in the house tonight. Jeff Anderson, Jeff Edwards, Joe Faust from sunny Northeast Ohio. The weather was not great today. Joe Hammond, Joe Okabayashi, Joe Mentum, John Longshore is here. Our good friend Stacking Limit will not be in attendance this evening. He is ill, so best wishes to Andrew for a very speedy recovery from whatever it is that he's got. John Clark, Jonathan Dyer, Carl Crater from the Wargame Bootcamp, Lee Grant, Mark McNair, Marty Sample is here, Meandering Mike, Midi Doctors, Mike H, Neil Badkey, Paul Dangle, Perfidious Albion, Randy Maudlin, Stigler, Stuart Ellis Gorman is here, Stuka Joe is here. Tim Greenhaw, Tim Zales, Tony Mammal, Vince Ree, William Aarons, William Bird. I apologize if I've missed anybody, and I know that I have. Mike H, I think I did get you. Not new office. Reorg in preparation. The new office is a component of the reorg, but it's unlikely to get done before the end of the year. Somebody new popped into the chat, and I can't find it now, so I apologize to anybody that I have missed. It's YouTube's fault as usual. So, hilariously enough, we are actually clipping air and naval counters for Atlantic Wall at this time. We might get through that this evening, but we might not. We'll see. So, let's dig into the news. So, the top news for the week is that the winner of the Bobby Nunez, many of us will remember him as Bobby Factor, Memorial Award for Best Wargaming, or whatever the actual verbiage is, media, has been announced, and the winner is Beyond Solitaire, Liz Davidson's podcast. It is outstanding. Folks should listen to it if they are not already. So congratulations on a well-deserved award to Liz for winning that award, and it's a great way for us to remember Bobby as well, who is no longer with us, unfortunately, as of, I think it was earlier this year, or possibly last year. It was definitely last year. Another big piece of news, and this has already been mentioned in the chat, um, that what's going on here about the last 10 minutes of the Compass live stream. Oh yeah, okay. So John's talking about this already. So it's safe to talk about this. John Krantz is leaving Compass Games, not because he can't stand Bill anymore, or because Bill fired him, but because he has accepted a lucrative job offer in the corporate world. So Godspeed to John. His commitment to Consim World and the Consim World Expo, none of that's going to change. He's just not going to be working for Bill anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if he had some level of continued contribution, but he will not be overseeing major projects at Compass Games anymore, from what I understand. We actually waited like 1 week too long to ask him to be on the Tuesday show. So yeah, the best way to make $1 million selling war games is to start with $10 million, as we know. My nose is bothering me here. Hold on a second. I'm trying to wipe it out here. Anyway. So that's news. In shipping news, we have. Well, I will be discussing this in a moment. But thank you, Eric. So GMT's December batch of stuff is shipping. It includes Wargames, according to Mark, which should be arriving here tomorrow. Somehow the message got mangled at GMT, and they didn't ship mine last, apparently. So there's that. I can't wait to take a look at that. And that might be because I'm technically between books at the moment. That might be something I slot in basically immediately, so I can live with that. MMP, on the other hand, is having a flash sale. This is kind of a repeat of their fall sale, or whenever they did that before. I'm going to throw a link to this sale page in the chat so folks can check that out. If you need any of this stuff, now is the time. The prices here are pretty much the same prices that they were in their big sale a couple of weeks ago. A lot of it is ASL stuff, but there are a variety of other things as well. I might as well pull it up. I actually had pictures of the reorganization, and I couldn't get them to transfer off the phone, which was very irritating. And I'm sure all I have to do is restart the computer, but by that time the show was starting in 3 minutes, so we couldn't do it. All right, so we've got, let's do page 1 first. We've got A Victory Awaits, which has a good reputation. Angola, which has a great reputation. Ardennes 2, which is a pretty recent release for $48. This might be Dean's last design to have been published while he was with us. So there's a chance I'll be ordering that. A bunch of ASL stuff. I can't even order any of that because I need to go in through and catalog exactly what I have. That is, by the way, my organizational project for 2025, and we'll talk about that in the last show of the year, which is on, I think, December 30th. So that's the week after next. A bunch more ASL stuff, some starter kit stuff. Autumn for Barbarossa, which is an SCS game on... it's basically OCS Smolensk, but with SCS instead. Sam Eric Lease is on here. That's worth having if you're, into ASL and into that particular topic. Guadalajara, which is SCS Goose Green, which is the latest TCS game, Front Toward Enemy, which got a good reception, but it seems to have dropped off everybody's radar. OCS Entry Hungarian Rhapsody, Edson's Ridge, or Kawaguchi's Gamble, which is, I believe, an Area Impulse game, as is Money's Gamble Market Garden. SCS North Africa, good time to pick that up. Under Richmond 2 is on sale, folks. If you haven't picked this up, now is the time. You're going to save like almost $70 on this by ordering that now. Operations Magazine with Panzer Blitz Carentan, Panzer Battles, which is SCS, Panzer's Last Stand, which is BCS, Race for Bastogne, which is GTS, Rock of the Marne, which is SCS, Salerno, which is the variable combat system. That's the only game in that system. It has been canned by MMP. But we will continue to see more stuff from that general family of games in the future because it remains popular. We'll be talking about that in the near future as well. Bunch of different issues of Special Ops, Storm over Dien Ben Phu, another Area Impulse game, as is Storm over Jerusalem, Sword and Fire Manila, which is an enormous historical ASL module, Skirmisher number 3, which is the one without any counters or anything in it. There might be a couple of scenarios, but I'm not sure. To Take Washington, which is Line of Battle, Valley of Tears is on sale. Good time to pick that up. I'm very impressed with what I see from that so far. Warriors of God, which is 100 Years War stuff. Warriors of Japan, which is some kind of feudal Japan thing. I don't know exactly what the topic is. And some more ASL stuff. So if you're interested in any of this, and hey, there's a Yank second edition. So if you're even trying to fill out some of the basics of ASL, I'd consider that not required, but you probably want it if you're getting into ASL. And Vicky, thanks for stopping by. Mr. Mark Herman is here. Thanks for stopping by. And yes, so I have not mailed out the giveaways yet. I need to do that. That is on my to-do list for tomorrow. So I apologize to Mark and Mike for not shipping those out yet, but they are. So as you can see, Mark, I would like to get rid of some excess Traveler stuff. Duplicates, of course. So I am motivated to get that shipped out the door. In other shipping news, there has been some recent hubbub about some paid-for products from the Second World War series, Diffraction Entertainment, the Knowledge Company, who's ever running that operation now. Pleased to be able to report that they appear to be shipping now. There have been some update videos from them. So, as well as some long-awaited stuff from Lock and Load Publishing. I think their stuff has now cleared customs, and they may have received the merchandise in the last couple of days. That stuff, whatever, all of it, the World War 85 stuff and the Empire and Glory stuff and the other stuff, it's all on the same boat. So all that stuff will be on its way to you if you have pre-ordered it very, very soon. So there's that. All right. And then this is day 17 of no tobacco, and still vaping. I'm going to talk a little bit about the mechanics of this in a second here, but the toughest day was the drive day when I commute for an hour and 45 minutes to the office. So I am... That day was trying, let me put it that way, but I managed to get through it, so we're in good shape. Now, the way this stuff works is you can just buy, of course, the things at the gas station, and you throw them away when they're empty. I am buying, I'll show this one because it's a little more colorful. I've got an actual big honkin' vape thing, which puts out way more vapor than the little disposables, and vape juice. Now, there's a challenge with that, because the concentration of nicotine in the juice, that is approximately what you get from cigarettes, is what I'm going to call 2.4 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter of fluid. Okay, that's the cigarette equivalent. This stuff I'm vaping is 1.2, so it's already half of that. And I think I'm going to cut it in half again when I step down, which is pretty much happening as soon as I'm out of this juice. And from there, I'll cut it in half again to 3, and then I'll cut it to 0. But you can't buy, there's some new Ohio law that you can't buy vape juice on the internet anymore, which sucks, because that's how I was getting it before. It's way cheaper. You've got a lot more options, so I'm just buying it from local places, but it is cheap. So I will, actually, yeah, good point. I will harass Dan about this when I talk to him tomorrow. So, and then in final news, and again, I have pictures of this, and I can't pull any of the pictures up, which sucks. But I'm reorganizing the games, because I've got back to the point where there are about 8 boxes that are full of games. So we're gonna... I leveraged some additional Calaxes that I wasn't using before that were just holding junk. And yeah, no kidding. It's too new. That nonsense dates from post-prohibition. So for those who don't know, Ohio, if you're buying liquor in Ohio, like liquor, not beer or wine, you've got to buy it from the state. Whether you buy it in a Giant Eagle or not is something else, but you're buying it from the state one way or the other. It's a pain in the ass. It's not really a pain in the ass, because we've got plenty of places around here. The problem is there's a lot of stuff I can't get, because a lot of liquor distributors don't want to deal with Ohio and our bullshit. So in any case, So the reorganization was motivated by, I have been picking up a decent number of books lately, ebooks and physical books. And I wanted to try and have like an area where I could do little videos and that kind of stuff. I have a picture of this and I can't see it. So, because I couldn't pull it to the computer. So I set all that up. The books are all done, but that freed up additional space that was occupied by books for games. So I'm kind of in the middle of that. The games in this room, this is not a new room. It is the same office I have been recording in since we moved here. So when we moved in, one of my first things was to get the games organized. So I got the shelving up, and this took months, of course. It was not instantaneously. But I got the shelves up, and I got a whole wall of war games in there. But I had the Traveler stuff on that wall too. So the thinking at the moment is that RPG stuff will be in this room, books will be out in that room, and war games will be in the game room behind me. We'll see if I succeed at this goal. PA was like that, and that's one reason why PA's liquor selection is basically the same as Ohio's. It's basically all the same stuff that you can get here. It's dumb. It does, doesn't it? How about that? I had pretty limited experience with the disposables. Somebody bought me one to help me out when I was first trying to quit years and years ago. And I switched to a variety of different dedicated vape devices pretty much after that. It's also cheaper. So this bottle, this is 30 milliliter bottle. This costs about somewhere between 10 and 15 bucks, depending on where you get it and what it is. This thing was like 30, but it's 100 milliliters. So, and you could get it in a variety of different flavors. Yes, but now I need to worry about getting them transported from Columbus, which is the nearest IKEA, to here. And what that sounds like is renting a pickup truck. Driving down to Columbus, buying like all of them that I need, and then driving the pickup up back, unloading everything into the garage, and then taking the pickup truck back, and then putting the Billy bookcases together in the same methodology over the span of a month or something like that. When that happens, I think the filming area will end up upstairs and we will reorganize again. But for the moment, I am tired. I've got boxes of stuff kind of sitting all over the place, and it is in the way of the gaming I would like to do here. So that is the motivation for that. I also have an update. I gave you the update last week on the current Noble Knight campaign, but I'm going to put it up again right now because, let me pull, New Hampshire is the same way. That's disappointing. Wisconsin's not, Kentucky's not. So, just arrived, I think last Tuesday, La Révolution Française, a lovely copy from our good friends at Noble Knight Games. So thanks to everybody who used the affiliate link. I will announce a new campaign, but I probably won't do that until at least the show in 2 weeks, and possibly the first show in January. I think we'll announce the new campaign then, because I have not yet decided what it is going to be. I have some ideas, but I haven't not made a final determination. Yes, in pretty much, yeah. I don't know how it works in Canada, but it is named something very similar. So once again, thanks to Noble Knight, and thanks to everybody who contributed by using the affiliate link, which is, of course, in the video description. So, all right, yeah, I wouldn't call it pristine, but it's really nice. It wasn't in the shrink or anything like that. I was pretty surprised when we went through the Azure Wish stuff last week. That Noble Knight had as much Azure Wish stuff in stock as they do. I noticed checking it this week that there's a little less. So you're welcome, Noble Knight, and thanks to everybody who has patronized Noble Knight on that particular stuff. And I hope that I helped to raise the visibility on this very interesting publisher that is not well known in the U.S. So, which was kind of the goal, actually. So, anyway. All right, do I have any more reorganization news? No, not really. No, not really. So, all right, so let's talk about well, let me get some whiskey first, because that's necessary. And probably some water is not a terrible idea. So, I want to talk about our as a wargaming community, what are our favorite battles? Now, we all know that the Bulges one Waterloo is one, Gettysburg is one. There have been a million games on those particular battles. And I am thinking today about battle games. Somebody mentioned Stalingrad. The problem with that is that the Stalingrad as a brand is certainly extremely popular, but most games about Stalingrad aren't about the battle in Stalingrad. They're operational games, and Stalingrad is somewhere on the map. Captain Nolan mentions Normandy. Yes, it is indeed. Early this morning, as of 1944, the Battle of the Bulge began. So, and that actually inspired the topic, because I didn't want to just talk about the Bulge, though, because we've talked about the Bulge before. So, the entire campaign, there's a pretty decent number of East Front games that cover the whole thing at a variety of different scales. From your Russian campaigns, where you could play that whole thing in an afternoon, all the way up to Europa, which doesn't actually let you play the whole thing because they never did the third module that was going to add on to Scorched Earth. But you can play it until you're damn sick of it. So, and I guess that's enough. I have played Pavlov's House, and it is pretty good. Of course, it's a David Thompson design. I think with a co-designer, but sorry, David's co-designer. I may have been Trevor Benjamin, but I'm not positive about that. Another of my favorites, somebody mentioned Normandy. There we go, Normandy, Captain Nolan mentioned. And that's another one that there's really never been a shortage of games on, right? Avalon Hill did D-Day back in 63 or 65 or something like that. And pretty much since then, we've had a decent chunk of Normandy games. Whether they are about, because remember that SPI in 69, 70, 71, something like that. Maybe it was 72, but pretty early SPI did a Normandy game as well. They also did Breakout and Pursuit, which is not the landing, but it's the breakout, right? And that was also a pretty early SPI game. And there haven't been, if we, I guess we should call that, if we're going to identify that as a battle, we'll call it Operation Cobra. And we haven't had quite as many of games about that as you might think. I think it's a little bit finely tuned, for one thing, meaning that I think it'd be hard to balance in an enjoyable way, right? This is a good question. Is Shiloh the second favorite Civil War battle, or is it Antietam? I mean, it's clearly Gettysburg is number one, right? Well, DJ Flippy, you and basically everybody else are into Ilau at the moment, because we've just seen a couple different Ilau games, and there's a lot of tied to Ilau coming as well. I have one piece of additional news that I forgot to mention. Marshall Enterprises will be at Winterfest in February for the first couple of days with their newest game, La Bataille d'Egmont, which I have ordered but hasn't shown up yet. But looking forward to taking a look at that. A Napoleon, and a very important Napoleonic battle that has not seen a lot of traction. I think you'd have to actually, I would want to, in terms of deciding whether Shiloh or Antietam is the most popular Civil War battle besides Gettysburg, I think it might be close enough that you'd have to go do a check, right? Which we will not be doing on the air. So, and this is true too, but you have a somewhat analogous situation on the Union side at Shiloh too, where the Union Army gets caught pretty much pants down on that first day. So, second day, lick them tomorrow, right? So, this is very interesting, Stuart. I should have realized that you would be on top of this. So, so good for you. I would be very interested in seeing the details of this analysis at the end. And there hasn't been, somebody mentioned Tobruk. There's been a couple games on that. There's more games in its Tobruk is probably a lot like Stalingrad in a way, in that there's more games about the campaigns surrounding it than for the fortress of Tobruk itself. But still, there have definitely been some. I think the second biggest, or most popular, I should say, Napoleonic battle among wargamers is probably Austerlitz. After Waterloo, a lot of company, or I shouldn't say it that way, a lot of productions end up with, yes, here is our Waterloo game, but here is also our game on the other battles of the 100 Days. So Ligny and Quatre Bras and Wavre, and in the case of the Library of Napoleonic Battles entry, they include La Souffle as well, which happens like a month later or something like that. Coral Sea is actually a good point. I do feel like, and some people will disagree with this, of course, but I think I'm right as far as board wargaming is concerned, possibly less so with miniatures. I do think that of World War II naval battles, Coral Sea is probably the most popular one. And that's because there's some really interesting things happen in that campaign that Mark says Midway over Coral Sea. There's certainly been a decent number of games about Midway too, although I think Coral Sea is probably a little easier to design because there are some like completely random things that no, I don't want to say random, but one of the two sides, for example, was tracking what they thought was an enemy fleet moving, and they investigated it, and it was like an oiler. So like one oiler floating around in the middle of the ocean. So that is just an example of where some interesting things that would be interesting to game happen in Coral Sea, and I think you will see that should you play that out using one of the Empire of the Sun variants or Pacific War or whatever. Midway is another one. Midway is basically an ambush on the U.S.'s part, though, right? So I feel like that's a little harder to design around, but we have seen a decent number of Midway games as well. There's of course the Avalon Hill Midway, which is a classic, and if you're a wargamer of a certain generation, you definitely played it. But there's also there's a Midway version of Flat Top, which is called CV and came out from Yaquinto. Second World War at Sea from Avalanche has done both Midway and Coral Sea, and Leyte Gulf for that matter, which is a huge naval battle, but it isn't necessarily that good to play. HUN 644 new. There's been a fair number of games about hunting the Bismarck too, and there's been one relatively recently from I think there's one coming from Compass, which may or may not be out yet, and there's a recent one from VUCA as well. Market Garden, which I think has been mentioned a couple of times, is definitely one of my favorites. I think it is an eminently gameable battle. Somebody went through Atlantic Wall here, by the way, and hand wrote some of the errata on the counters, which bugs me. That's something I didn't notice before, but it is what it is. It's a 50-year-old game. What are you going to do? All right, so Stewart says that initial findings seem to indicate Gettysburg, then Shiloh, then First Bull Run, then 7 Days, then Antietam. That's interesting, if we count all the 7 days together. It's a little bit of an accounting sheet. That's some Hollywood math right there, right? If we count all the battles together, then there have been a decent number of games on the individual battles. Like the Gamers Civil War Brigade series did all of them, for example. Or all the big ones, anyway. Yes, this was the case too, but then they did CV, which is pretty much Midway, and using the flat top system or something very close to it. It's on my wish list. Borodino has been covered a few times. SPI did it. OSG did it, obviously. I'm trying to think of who did that Great Redoubt, which is a game about Borodino. Of course, there's a couple different Labatai versions of it. The Great Redoubt, was that Yaquinto? Maybe. I'm not sure I remember. I've seen the game a number of times and actually saw it in the warehouse at Noble Knight as well. Yes, but I will note that the Gettysburg out of the blue and gray quad was not the whole battle either. It was just Cemetery Hill, as I recall. So, well, MIDI Doctors, I don't know if the battles that are underrepresented are more interesting in an absolute sense, but we may find them more interesting because we have seen less of them, and some of them are really good battles. I have said for years that one of my favorite Napoleonic battles is Aspern-Essling, because it's a really fascinating situation. And it easily could have gone either way. But, a lot of battles that we see a lot of could have gone either way. Maybe not the Bulge. The Bulge was pretty much going to happen the way it happened, to within a certain margin of error. Somebody mentioned Shiloh in ASL, which I endorse as a way to, if you want the Battle of Stalingrad, you're not going to get the whole thing, unless you're insane. But there's that. Fast Carriers by SPI is another one. Plus, there's USN from SPI too, which covers some different stuff, but I'm pretty sure Coral Sea and Midway are both in there, I think. Those are relatively recent activations, and I say the plural because I now have both the Decision version Deluxe USN and the original SPI version in the flat. Mark has played Midway Avalon Hill a whole bunch of times, which again is not particularly surprising. And I think Midway probably is of the Avalon Hill games that came out in the 60s. I think it's probably one of the ones that holds up a little better. It's certainly not the way a game like that would get designed today. This is plausible, yeah. And of course, Jutland. There haven't been that many games on Jutland, right? There's, of course, Jutland, and there's a thing for the First World War at sea, again from Avalanche. But Panama Canal scenario. That's interesting, but that's very old history, I think. Joe Faust says that when he was in the South Pacific, a guy missed his entrance, and so riffed on Coral Sea. There you go. There you go. It's all about the improv sometimes. And there are lots of market garden games. Not as many as Bulge, but there's a lot. We are not starved for market garden games. We're not starved for Sicily games either. There's a lot of Sicily games. I at one point had, I think, 15 different Sicily games. So there's that. Gallipoli, there's a decent number of games about that. I can think of 0 games about, for example, a lot of World War I battles that are relatively well known because they were just bloodbaths and there was, no substantial victory achieved by either side. The Somme is like that. We've seen a couple games on the Marne. We've seen a couple games on a few other things. Sedan, there's a couple games on that. Now, on the other hand, as Captain Nolan mentions, and I've mentioned this before too, probably my favorite Civil War battle is Chickamauga, again, because I find the situation fascinating. And Battle of Tsushima. There's been a couple games on this too, but not a ton. And nowadays, I think if you ask your average American, they will not know what you're talking about if you start talking about the Battle of Tsushima and the Russo-Japanese War of 1906 or whatever it was. So they won't be aware that even occurred. It was very important at the time. I mean, there's a fair number of games about Chickamauga too, right? There's offhand, there's a blue and gray game on Chickamauga. You take that or leave it. There's a Civil War Brigade series and a regimental sub-series game on Chickamauga. There's River of Death for GBACW, which hopefully will be getting redone at some point in the not terribly distant future, so I'm not dead by the time it comes out. There have only been a few games about Alesia. That's interesting, actually. There's at least 3 that I can think of. There's the Old Avalon Hill Alesia, there's the GVOH Alesia, and there's at least one other one. But there haven't been that many. Maybe games that include... no, that really doesn't make any sense either. Like Ancients 1, Ancients 2, back from whoever that was, 3W or Decision or Excalibur or something like that. GMT did Bordino as well as Asper Nestling and a couple other ones. Vagram is another one that hasn't really... I don't feel like there's that many games on Vagram. Captain Nolan says Great Redoubt was Quinto. Very good. Thank you. That's what I thought, but there's a lot of games in my head. What can I say? Age of Sail battles. That's actually a good point. The trouble with something like Trafalgar is that in a lot of game systems, it is going to be just too big to be particularly manageable, right? For Woodships and Iron Men, for example, unless you had 20 people in the game, like at a convention or something like that, which you could do, then I think that's a little bit difficult to handle. There's just a lot of ships. Flying Colors would do it, however. And you could do it in Sails of War or whatever the miniatures thing is that goes along with Wings of War. I've never played any of those, so I can't tell you anything about them, but the ships are nice, I could tell you that. Well, Smolensk, there's a couple of good games on that specifically, starting with, of course, Panzergruppe Guderian. which is on that topic. I don't think it's a great historical treatment of that topic, but it is a mechanically very important, influential, and impactful game. One of the most important, influential, and impactful games in the history of wargaming. But you've also got OCS Smolensk and now SCS Smolensk. SCS Smolensk is called Autumn for Barbarossa. OCS Smolensk is called Smolensk. I forget what the subtitle is, but I've played it more than I can count. So this is probably fair, actually. And there's been a decent number of games on the Valley Battles, too, if you collect them all together. A lot of them are smaller battles. So, was it? I thought it was just the Cemetery Hill part. I haven't even looked at that. I did pick up a copy of the first Blue and Gray Quad at one point, but I haven't really looked. It's the TSR one, so it's hideous, and I didn't want to look at it. So there you go. North Africa ranks high. I would agree with this. I think there's a lot of romance around Rommel specifically. Plus, there are some folks, including myself, who do remember Rat Patrol. So there's that. Well, I don't think the fact that it's a Confederate victory is a cause. Although it would be interesting to explore that question, because there's a decent number of Manassas Bull Run games. Those are both Confederate victories. Pretty clean Confederate victories. First Bull Run, at least, which I have studied much more than the second Bull Run, is that could have gone either way, to be completely honest. It was a pretty decisive Confederate victory, but it didn't have to turn out like that. Had a couple of things gone a little bit differently, that battle could have ended up in a similarly decisive victory for the Union. Chancellorsville is a Confederate victory. We don't really hear that many. There's not that many games about Chancellorsville. I think a lot of people just don't think it's very gameable. I'm not 100% sure I agree with that, but it is definitely a design challenge to do Chancellorsville in a I'm thinking of Fredericksburg, actually. But there's very few games on Fredericksburg. Not none, but not many. Captain Nolan says that Cemetery Hill was the entire Battle of Gettysburg. I'll have to take a look at it. Kursk is underrepresented. I was about to point to the Kursk SPI Kursk on my shelf from Eric Goldberg, and of course it's not there anymore. So we won't be doing that. It is now out in the room, and I wish I had the picture because I like the way it looks out in the room. All the SPI games are all lined up on a big shelf. It looks great. So, and a lot of little nitnoid shuffling will need to end up getting done to get everything on shelves. So, and I did need to salvage 2 shelves for the gamers, not MMP, but the gamers stuff. So TCS, BCS, and Civil War Brigade series and Napoleonic Brigade series are actually out in the other room. We'll hope to fix that. I have a plan to fix that, so we'll see how it works out. I mean, the where Rommel became famous to the Allied countries is in North Africa, right? I mean, the military people know who he was, obviously, but he got a lot of press. So, Golan Heights from the Yom Kippur War. There's been a decent number of games about this, and my introduction to gaming this topic will come in the form of Valley of Tears, hopefully sometime in 2025. And Chickamauga is indeed covered in Rebel Fury, and I'd really like to play it in Rebel Fury. Yes, I totally was. I actually almost had my wife on board with this because it was pretty close to Chattanooga, and we were going to go down to Chattanooga for something a few years ago, and the entire trip ended up not happening, so that didn't either. We're also going to definitely go to Lookout Mountain, which is right there, and so, but none of it actually happened. That is the closest I've gotten to talking to my wife into visiting a battlefield. A lot of people do like the blue and gray games, and they do. I know Stigler doesn't like them, and I think they're probably not my bag either, but they are easy to play. You could play them in 2 hours, no problem. They're not complicated. They're easy to teach. So they do have attractive features, and that holds up to the blue and gray 2 games as well, which I don't think SPI did. I don't think TSR did. SPI definitely did it. A ton? I'm not sure there's a ton, but there's no shortage either. So, off the top of my head, I'm not going to be able to name very many of them. There's more than I could name. There's October War, which is kind of a tactical exercise. There's Suez de Golan, which is no longer behind me. There's, of course, Valley of Tears. There's a couple of different Arab-Israeli war games in the SCS series I can think of off the top of my head. So there's a decent number. Let me put it that way. Chinese Farm. SPI did that. I can tell you that. That is in one of the Modern Battles quads, however. So I am actually pretty impressed with Decision's take on that Sea Lion game too. I'm not huge on like outright hypotheticals, and I consider that an outright hypothetical, but I will make an exception for that. It looks pretty good, and it looks pretty good. There's an unboxing video if you want to look at it. Bloody April 1917. So I assume we're talking about the air war over Arras here. Not a lot about that, but without checking, there's probably like some Blue Max scenarios or something like that to deal with that. Very good, very good. Mark says that Rebel Fury will be on the December P500 for a reprint. That's cool. I mean, that was going to happen sooner or later anyway. Wooden Ships and Iron Men is pretty cool. I think that is an all-time classic game. And definitely check out the conversation we had with James Day last week on the Chit Show, because he worked alongside Steve Peake and S. Craig Taylor on some things on the original Panzer for you Quinto. So DJ Flippy is a man after my own heart. Unfortunately, there has not been a war game on this. Well, there kind of is. Invasion Earth is Solmana Rim War. And I have that. I haven't played that, though. And nor have I really seriously thought about playing it. I would be interested in seriously playing Fifth Frontier War, however. So this is an interesting. Ed Holtzman says it would be nice to see more battles about the Sengoku Jidai, which is a specific period in feudal Japan. There is some stuff on this. The 2GBOH games, one of them, I think, covers this specific period. Ron is one of them, and Samurai is the other one. You've got Samurai Battles, the Commands and Colors Samurai Battles, which is, I think, out from GMT now after having been released by somebody else first. You've also got, I'm not going to try and recall the name, but there's a game from Hexasim on one of the battles of feudal Japan, which is, there's video on it on YouTube. You'll have to figure it out from Hexasim's list, because I don't trust my recollection of how it is pronounced. It starts with a T. And it is a very beautiful game. Very beautiful game. Yes, I would hope so. Yeah, right. Fornovo is a pretty interesting battle, and there's not a lot of games on it. There are a couple. Again, it's not behind me anymore. I have the one from Compass, which again looks beautiful. There's been a couple games on Rourke's Drift, not that many. There have been quite a few games on Operation Typhoon, however. I personally own about 4 or 5 of them. So I feel like I actually agree with this. I would like to see Operation Mars as well. But Guderian's Blitzkrieg is Typhoon, and the surrounding time period as well, if you certainly with GB2. And Baron Victory 2. Well, I would have loved to have seen this. But maybe Dave Powell, who's working on a game design, by the way, will do this for somebody else. I'd love to see it, and I can think of nobody better qualified to do Chickamauga than Dave Powell. So there's that. Barbarossa Derailed. Thank you, Paul Dangle, for that subtitle clarification. And it is named, of course, after the Glance book. Carl Fung, thanks for stopping by, Carl. I am shocked that you have time for this nonsense at this point. There's not that many games on the Wilderness. There are a couple. There's Wilderness Campaign from SPI. Off the top of my head, there's Wilderness Campaign from SPI. There's a number of things in the works. There's no turning back for Line of Battle, and there's whatever the Wilderness thing for GBACW is called. I would agree. I assume Stigler is responding to this. Chancellorsville, Fredericksburg's definitely hard to do. I think that the trick with Fredericksburg is you don't make it just the battle; you turn it into an operational exercise, as GCACW did, and then I think you can get a very interesting game out of Fredericksburg. If it's just the battle, I feel like and there's not many games on it, and I've never played one, so I'm willing to be proven wrong on this. I feel like it would be very difficult to reflect the abject Union stupidity at that without making the Union player feel like an idiot or making it a solitaire game. I think a certain amount of intentional Union crippling needs to go in there. This is not fundamentally different from Antietam, right? Or the Union Army just walks all over the Confederates, barring, assuming otherwise competent play. So... I think there is a game that includes the Siege of Chattanooga in Battle Above the Clouds, but it's not like solely focused on that. We're going to get 2 wilderness games over the next couple of years, so 2 big wilderness games. Oh, well, then there's that. Okay. So, well, if Dave would like to do Baron Victory 2, I would buy it. So... and in fact, if Dave Powell wants to do whatever Chickamauga thing he would like to do, I will be delighted to buy it. That includes the books too, but I've already bought those. So thank you for the clarification, Carl. And but again, Dave Powell, if you don't know, is one of our foremost experts on the Civil War in general, but Chickamauga specifically. He has written several magisterial books on the topic. Which are not only really well researched, but really well written too. Cannot recommend them highly enough. Captain Nolan clarifies that second quad was Wilderness, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, and Chattanooga. That's an interesting selection if you think about it, considering that Chancellorsville and Fredericksburg are 2 of the battles we're talking about that haven't been handled that much. Stewart says that First Bull Run is probably his favorite ACW battle. The element of approach to battle and the chaos of the still green armies makes for a very fun game. I can certainly understand that. And it's also not that big of a battle in terms when you start comparing it to battles that happened later, especially. So, Granyard Mitch says Tobruk. Stigler says First Bull Run. I do have Red Badger Courage for GBACW. Do I have any other Manassas games? I'd have to check, and I'm not walking out the door to do it. I did at one point have 3 battles of Manassas from the Gamers. I never played that. I might have that, but I'm not sure I still have it. But I do have Red Badger Courage from GBACW, and that looks good. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a bit of shorthand on Dave's part, but I mean, ultimately, we won't be getting any more Civil War Brigade series games or regimental sub-series games. That said, certainly in terms of replacing regimental sub-series, I think Line of Battle has that well in hand. But I would like to see a good brigade level Civil War battle series. Right now, you got the Civil War Brigade battle series from Worthington, and that's pretty good, but we don't have that many battles for that. Blind Swords is fundamentally a regimental system, so it's not quite the same scale. Mexican War. Yeah, there's a few games on this. There's Halls of Montezuma from GMT, and then the upcoming Halls of Montezuma from Fort Circle, plus Gringo, which we talked about in the last GMT show. There's a decent number. There's not a lot of games that say Kadai on the, as the title. But there's a decent number of games that include this battle. Zama is the same way. You can, I want to say, Captain Nolan, that the depth of the shelves is about 9 or 10 inches on the Billy bookcases. Don't quote me on that. Tunisia's definitely well covered. We've got plenty of games. I've got 3 or 4 games on that. That's a good way to look at it. Battles that are popular because of movies. I'm not sure if there's been a fair number of games on Rourke's Drift. I can confirm that. Market Garden, there's plenty of Market Garden games. There's no shortage of Market Garden games. I've probably got about 10 or 15. So DJ Flippy, this is one that Stuart expressed some admiration for on the podcast as well. The Iron Crown Manassas. I have never owned, despite owning a lot of stuff from Iron Crown Enterprises, I never owned any of their war games, including the Middle Earth ones, and definitely including this Manassas game. Are there many games on Pearl Harbor? No, not really. There's a post off the top of my head. I think somebody did a postcard game that was probably against the odds. Pearl Harbor is modeled in a number of games. Pacific War has a scenario for it, for example, but it is very much a solitary exercise where the Japanese do their waves and the Americans don't really have anything to do. It's literally the first scenario in the game just to kind of show you how the combat mechanics work. There's a number of games with Pearl Harbor in the title, including Avenge Pearl Harbor, which I think MMP reprinted it in in Operations Magazine, or Special Ops anyway. But I believe it appeared elsewhere first. There's also GDW's Pearl Harbor from like 81 or 79 or something like that. But that basically covers most or all of the Pacific War, not just Pearl Harbor. Dien Bien Phu has gotten a decent number of treatments. Probably the one I would be looking at now if I were looking for a game on Dien Bien Phu, which is a pretty interesting battle, actually. If you don't know, this is Vietnam, but before the Americans got involved, and it's still the French fighting the Viet Minh. It is a messy battle, and the French did not win. So I would look at the one from Kim Kang, or I think that's from Legion. I think. Alistair, thanks for stopping by. I understand the family commitments. Barlev's another one. That's which Arab-Israeli war is Barlev, though? Is that the 73 Yom Kippur War, or is that one of the other ones? I've never owned any version of that. Any hypothetical World War II battle? There are some. There's that Invasion Malta that I think is a Vance von Borries game. One of the TCS games is mostly or largely hypothetical. I'm not sure if that's the one or not, and I may be confusing that with something else too. I heard that, and this could have just been baseless scuttlebutt. I heard that this was something that was actually considered doing an enemy coast ahead on Pearl Harbor. I would personally be very interested in seeing that. It's a sensitive topic, but Jeremy White is the designer of that series, and I trust Jeremy to do a responsible job on a sensitive topic. So I'd be basically completely cool with that. Carl, thanks for stopping by. All right. Barlev's October War, so as to go on, Mech War 2, Chinese Farm 2 version. Yeah, okay. So Barlev is 73. So remember, I don't know much about those conflicts other than that they happened in the approximate time frame in which they happened. And the only games I have on those on the Arab-Israeli wars is, found a British one. October War. I might have another one that I can't remember, but it's not more than that. And of course, Valley of Tears, which I'm also pretty impressed with. We're kind of fishing for a fourth player for our game at Winterfest, and if we had the fourth player, then I think Valley of Tears might be something we would play. All right, so yeah, this is how it is in Pacific War, right? It's to show you how the basic combat works. It's not intended to be a competitive scenario, and to be fair, it's a very difficult thing to do as a competitive scenario. In Empire of the Sun, starting with Pearl Harbor as opposed to starting with the first 1942 turn is an option, but unless you're like are really going out of your way to like experience the entire war from the beginning, you might as well just start with the recommended scenario of that starts in the first turn of 1942. The Alamo has had a couple of games. There's, of course, the Eric Lee Smith one from SPI, but somebody else did one too, and there may be a couple of magazine games. I wouldn't say... This is another one where it's like, it's not like the battle was competitive, right? It was brave, but not competitive. I think I remember seeing this, actually. I don't know if that got pulled or not. I haven't looked at that in eons. And as Carl mentions, there's not as many Yom Kippur War games that cover the whole thing. They either cover one or the other. They either cover Sinai or the Golan Heights. And Valley of Tears does the whole thing. But it does it in a very smart way where it's split. So you've got, as I recall, 3 maps for Suez and 1 map for the Golan Heights. So, and they're not contiguous. So you can put the Golan Heights on a different table, and you can have 2 players playing Golan and 2 players playing Suez, and it'll move very quickly. We found playing last Blitzkrieg that you would be shocked how much adding a 4th player sped up our play. It like doubled our speed of play. Just because we could split the map and say, I'm handling the north, you're handling the south, and there's the 2 people that are handling it on the other side, and we just play, and there's less sitting around, and it's just a much smoother experience. So this is possible, yeah. I'll probably be waving behind me about various SPI games for at least a month or 6. So designer edition of SPI Sinai. Oh, the SPI Sinai too. That's another one. I had not remembered that. And I never played that. I don't remember why I was intrigued by that particular game, but I was in fact intrigued by SPI Sinai at one point. GDW Suez 73. Good call on that. Captain Nolan says Chinese firm designed by Howie Barish. Who did a lot of really good work for SPI, I will observe. Battle of Britain. A lot of the representation that we would see in the Battle of Britain in war games is going to be air-to-air combat stuff, right? So Skies Over Britain that came out pretty recently and was extremely well received. There are a couple of games that do it at a different level. Off the top of my head, you've got the classic John Butterfield RAF, which is now in its umpteenth printing with Decision, and I've got the Decision version, and it's terrific. There's also the Burning Blue from Lee Brimacombe Wood, which is actually similar in a lot. I mean, this is not terribly shocking. Similar in a lot of ways to RAF, but RAF is in turn similar in a lot of ways to John Butterfield's earlier entry on that topic, Battle Over Britain for TSR, and that may have been something that was in the cooker for SPI, and that ended up getting published by TSR instead. That did happen on a number of occasions. In some cases, the resulting game was not terribly close to whatever it was that SPI was working on. Julius Caesar is the example I'm thinking of there. Oslo 1940, Massive Naval Showdown. Interesting. Yeah, it's called like I can't remember the name, and it's Japanese, and I don't speak Japanese, and I'm not going to try. Blah, 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 blah. It starts with a T. It's from Hexasim, and it's gorgeous. Look it up on BGG. Most Dangerous Time is about feudal Japan. Well, I said that. Or no, I didn't, did I? That was the other thing from MMP that I can't even remember the name of now. Chinese Farm is also a scenario in IDF, which is not at all surprising, actually. Where's the water? I knocked this over at least once today, so try and be responsible about it. In not that many games about the Falklands War, I agree with this. There's Where There Is Discord, there's Mrs. Thatcher's War, and there's Goose Green, and there's a couple other ones, but not very many. Kursk is underrepresented. Yeah, no, actually it is. If we're just talking about Kursk, if we say that Kursk is in Russian campaign, then yeah, okay. Then if we cast the net that widely, then Kursk is all over the place. But game just on Kursk, there haven't been as many as you'd think for as big and well-known a battle as it is. This is not the game I am thinking. I think this is not the game I'm thinking of. There we go. This is the game. Tenkato Itsu? That's my version of the Japanese transliteration into English is pretty phonetic, but we are also not picking up the long vowels, which are important in Japanese. So, Carl, Dave, maybe he's just noodling, but didn't I see Dave on Facebook a week or two ago talking about a custom version of War in Europe that he's working on? Maybe that is just a private personal project and he has no intention of publishing it. That's plausible. Although, if Dave were to do that, again, I would be delighted to purchase it. Or I could also be mixing him up with somebody else, to be fair. So that's very possible. There was a CWB. Oh yeah, Bloody Road South. I don't have this one though. I've got 3 or 4, maybe 5 CWB games. They're not really. Oh, I am not sure which comment Mark is referring to here. I mean, in most cases, well, without knowing what we're talking about, it's hard to say. I'm grievously behind on the chat at this point. I am like 20 minutes behind on the chat. I apologize for that, folks. Do we? Nope, nothing I have to get to. However, it is 9 p.m. You know what time that is? The approximate time in which we hear from our good friends at Noble Knight Games. I will use this 30 seconds to try and catch up on the chat. So take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world. Just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
I didn't get very far, so thanks, Noble Knight. Operation Ichigo. Yeah, so this is a huge land campaign relatively late in the land war in China between the Chinese and the Japanese. This is actually pretty interesting. The whole conflict is interesting. There is at least one game on Operation Ichigo that I want to say it was a magazine game. But what I don't remember is whether it was like a World at War or an S&T or an Against the Odds. But I can only think of one game on that topic. And in general, when we're talking about the land war between China and Japan in the period 1937 to 1945, there are relatively few games on that topic. And it is a really interesting topic. I got turned on to this by taking a History of Modern China class, in which we dealt with that to some extent. So I am by no means well informed about it, but I have read a couple of books about it and have a couple more that I need to read. And there's, again, I think there's a World at War solitaire game. There's War of Resistance, and there's War of the Suns that cover the whole thing. And then there's a couple, not very many, again, that cover smaller parts of that conflict. All right, Stephen Rochelle says that Battle Above the Clouds has 2 advanced campaign scenarios. Absolutely right. Chickamauga and Chattanooga, you get a full picture in both. That is, again, absolutely correct. Let's see here. Mitch in Maine, welcome to the show. Has an old Victory Games or Avalon Hill Games of Lee versus Grant Wilderness. That's from Victory Games. That is a Joe Bukowski design. And that is a precursor to the Great Campaigns of the American Civil War series. It's not the same, but it's more. I picked it up, I want to say 2023 at Compass Expo, and it is more similar to GCACW than I expected it to be. I've heard of this game, but I have not. I have never owned it or seen it. Gazala by People's Wargames. Have I seen that? Maybe. The non-East Front World War II stuff from People's Wargames is stuff that tends not to be particularly well remembered nowadays. Which is no comment on the games themselves, although their Aachen game was not supposed to have been very good. First Bull Run was in Cross 5 Aprils. I think that's true. I've never owned a Cross 5 Aprils either. But if Eric follows through on his plan to do a new version of it, I will be delighted to buy it. Stigler says that Red Badge encourages treatment of First Manassas is a masterpiece. The Utter Chaos is intense. I find that totally believable. These are both block games, as I recall. I don't have either of these. I have Bobby Lee and Sam Grant, which are more operational, and I like those from what I haven't played either one, but I like the looks of them. Marty says we could use more Tunisia games. Both sides do get to attack and defend. That's true. I feel like I have a decent. I mean, I feel we could have more. I mean, we don't have enough bulge games yet, so there's that. There's a couple games on this. There's War in the Wind from Compass, which is one of those island battles. Yeah, I mean, this is dwarfed by the armies at Gettysburg, for example. The Avalon Hill, I think this is called Bull Run, and it has a terrific cover. It does not have a great reputation. Apparently, it was kind of shelved for like 10 or 15 years and came out much later and felt dated to certain people when it did come out, assuming that's the game we're talking about, and assuming I'm remembering it correctly, which is by no means guaranteed. Let's see here. Casino. A few games on this. There's the SPI Casino, which is a John Prados game. I think I'm remembering that. There have been several Kasserine Pass games. The one I've played is I've seen the action in other games. There's Tunisia 2, which OCS, which I've played, and then there's the Baptism by Fire for BCS. I've played that too. All right, not many games on specific battles in Vietnam. This is quite right. There are a few. So for one thing, you've got the classic Nick Carp Victory Games Vietnam, which is the whole conflict, but does have individual battle scenarios. You've got Silver Bayonet from GMT, which was their first release. I have the reprint 25th anniversary, whatever it is, edition, and it's pretty nice. That's I think there's a few different things in it, but the Iadrang is the one that I'm thinking of. We are going to see a Vietnam battles for TCS at some point, so I'll be happy to jump on that. GDW did Dien Bien Phu as well. Do you want to call this part of the Vietnam War as the Americans understand it? You should, because it's part of the larger conflict, but I think most Americans would have is what they would say about that. All right. Ooh, Citadel from GMT. That was Dien Bien Phu, as I recall, yeah. This is Air Assault on Crete. Yeah, Air Assault on Crete was the one from Avalon Hill. Descent on Crete was the one from SPI. And the Avalon Hill one did have the Malta thing in it. I don't remember Gibraltar, but I've never owned that either. Paul Rohrbaugh, we did have him on the show. He lives, 40 minutes from here. Iron Curtain is totally hypothetical, yes. However, I actually had Iron Curtain, and Fucko really wanted it, and I decided he wanted it more than I did, so we made some kind of deal where he ended up with it. But from what I saw of it, and this is not my favorite topic, right? From what I saw of it, I was pretty impressed with it as a kind of a sandbox Cold War conflicts package. There's a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different setups, different ways you could play through that. So Iron Curtain is absolutely worth a look. And frankly, if it was on sale right now, I'd probably have ordered it. So, all right. Bob Cummeth, thanks for stopping by. Battles of Victoria in the Peninsula Campaign. There's at least one, but I'm not sure there's been much more than that. Oh, I think you might have provided this anecdote in the past. This sounds like very meticulous research to me. First Ypres in the Red Poppy series. Yeah, this is the one I don't have, and in fact is really kind of hard to find now. If you're interested in Vietnam battles, or at least operational Vietnam, take a look at Snafu Store. They are a Spanish publisher. They've done a few games already. Their first box game is going to be Hot Dry Season from Pat Mullen, which I've played. There's a video on this. It's terrific. So highly recommended. And that was with Legion, but it moved from Legion over to Snafu because it wasn't making a lot of traction at Legion for whatever reason. It's excellent. I don't know why people don't jump all over it. All right. I admit that I do not know why it was called the Chinese Farm. So I know dick about that battle. Very good call. Joe Green says that Pearl Harbor is a training scenario in both Pacific War and Advanced Pacific Theater of Operations, which I just finished clipping earlier today. So, Victory in the Pacific is a terrific game, but it's pretty high level. It's pretty abstract, and I think it takes a little longer to play than it ought to, based on the kind of game that it is. But then again, I'm also prepared to believe that other more competent people could play it faster than me. So there's that. All right, we want to. Mitch and Maine mentions task force. Very good. I assume that we're talking about the relatively recent VUCA task force, which I think is actually a redo of an older Jack Green game, as I recall. I vaguely remember this, but I do not have this issue. There's a lot. So you've got the GDW thing, and so you've got the Third World War series, a series of 4 games that GDW did back in the day. Okay, and that was redone by Compass in a single omnibus, beautiful box. You've also got NATO: The Cold War Goes Hot, which is a redo of a Victory Games game that was one of the earlier Victory Games releases from like 83 or 84. Bruce Maxwell, the designer, decided he wanted to kind of revise it, and his revision is very thorough. I don't know that I would say that it is a completely different game than the original, but it is a substantially different game. I never played the original. I have played the new one from Compass. It is excellent. And actually, it's interesting to compare and contrast with Third World War II, because they're the same topic, but the treatments are quite different. Narvik by GDW. So this is one of the more interesting and more approachable Europa entries as well. As I recall, it may have been one of the Europa games that used a slightly different scale than the rest of the games, thereby creating compatibility problems. But I don't take that very seriously, because I don't think you should be linking those games together in the first place. I think you're just kind of making extra work for yourself. The Europa games are meaty enough on their own. The only thing I think you can justify really putting together is definitely Fire in the East and Scorched Earth. So Norway is undercovered. Somebody on YouTube did a very some video on a very interesting Norway game that was, I think, a European game of some kind, and I don't remember who the channel was, and I don't remember the name of the game. There's not no games on this topic, but there's not very many that like cover the whole thing. There's more that cover like specific incidents, but there's not even that many of those. So it is a grievously undercovered topic. So the Burning Blue. Yeah, this is basically true. It's not, if you want like a campaign that simulates the whole Battle of Britain, Burning Blue is not going to give you that. Well, you could just keep playing it, I guess. But it's not really built to do that. All right. So, and a number of other people, Tenkatoitsu is the Texas sim game, and it's gorgeous. Check this thing out on BGG. All right. Oh, yeah. Well, this is true. There's a Flying Pig Curse. Am I not thinking about that? Or is that part of the old school tactical thing? And there's Sekigahara too. That's pretty abstract, but a lot of people really like Sekigahara, so it's worth investigating. I need to try it at some point. I don't want to buy it unless I've tried it already. There's multiple games on P Ridge. There's a Blind Swords game on P Ridge, which is called Thunder in the Ozarks. And then there's, of course, the SPI P Ridge as well, which is an early GBACW game. We got 150 people in the chat here, so P Ridge. Okay, so the P Ridge I just mentioned is the GBACW one. I didn't realize it was in Across 5 Aprils as well. And of course, we're beating me to it because I'm actually only 11 minutes behind on the chat. I'm trying to putter through it here. This is the Overland. Lee versus Grant is the Overland campaign in 1864. So it's another undercovered one. It's kind of been replaced now by Grant Takes Command, but if you prefer Lee versus Grant, go to town. Ah, okay. Ioshima, which I've seen but I haven't played or owned. John Clark says ATO did the Ichigo game. All right, Eric Goebel ordered from Noble Knight with permission from supervisors. Oh, there you go. Oh, nice, nice. Invasion Sicily, the Vance von Boris GMT game. That's a terrific little game, and it is criminally under discussed nowadays. I think this is hilarious because you go down and look at a lot of these Civil War battlefields. I mean, there's been efforts in recent decades to preserve them and to do better at that, but a lot of them have been overtaken by suburban sprawl and similar shit. All right, Vlad C. Thanks for stopping by. He's been playing Downtown that they're enjoying, and Elusive Victory is actually that's a good catch on that. That is the operational, semi-operational air game from I think somebody other than Lee Brimacum Wood, but it's kind of part of that Downtown family on the Arab-Israeli 73 war. So ATO did it on Lok in Vietnam. That's cool. ATO has generally done some reasonably interesting topics. Or reasonably interesting treatments of topics that we've seen a lot of, like Beyond Waterloo, for example. We got plenty of Waterloo games, but none of the other ones are really like that. All right, Hui. Yeah, who did this? Was this Mayfair? Did Hui? This was another one that I wanted to mention when we were talking about Vietnam battles. I think that was supposed to have been Hui in the movie as well. But there's a game called Hui, which of course, being from Ohio, most people pronounce Hugh, but because it's spelled that way. But I Mayfair doesn't ring correct to me. Meandering Mike says that there's 8 games on BGG with Vittoria in the title. A couple of them might be miniatures things. Russo-Polish War. Yeah, Striking the Eagle. There's a couple of games on this. There's Red Star, White Eagle as well from GDW, and that was redone by Compass as well. Galicia. I think we could use more games on Galicia. Ypres, I've never really researched or played. Galicia I have, and it's pretty interesting. Okay, so MIDI Doctor says that Chinese agricultural experts worked there, hence Chinese farm. Very good. And Mark says it was called Chinese farm because Israeli intelligence saw writing on the agricultural equipment from Japan. Okay. And then Carl is backing that up. So it's not just Americans, folks. All right, let's see. Captain Nolan agrees that the new NATO is substantially different. And I think at a glance, again, I never played the original, but I have at least looked at it. And it looks more complex, but it's also more complex than maybe people think it is based on the size of the rule book. It's not that hard to play. The rule book is very verbose. It has information on any particular question or rules item in multiple places a lot of times. That adds a lot of page count. We found it to be an exceptionally clear and well-written rule book. I'm not hearing the same thing about Aaron Armour, but I don't have that yet, so it's a thing to get. Russo-Finnish War, it's another good one. I am covered on the Russo-Finnish conflict as part of World War, or associated with World War II anyway. So, yeah, I remember this. Invasion Norway, perhaps? Was that what that was called? Perhaps a David James Ritchie design? I might be misremembering any of those things. Now, I don't have Sekigahara, but I do have Granada from Compass that is based on that system. So it is very likely that will actually get played before Sekigahara, since I don't own it. Oh, okay, very good. Now, as soon as you said Platoon Commander Deluxe, I could picture in my head what this looks like. You're absolutely right, Mike. Thank you. Red Sun Rising? Red Sun Rising? I don't know. GG Flippy has the early 80s Norway game from Hobby Japan. And yes, this is good point, actually. I had forgotten about this. So Eric Lee Smith's Battle Hymn Volume 1 from Compass, there should be a Battle Hymn Volume 2 at some point, I think, is a close relative of the Across 5 April system. It's not the same, but it is similar in some ways. I have not played this, but what I have played is the... That's interesting. We're going to need a scissors to repair this counter. That is unusual. Looks like we had some ripping when it was removed from the counter sheet. That does not happen that often. All right. There is a video game version of the Gettysburg side of this game called Gettysburg: The Tide Turns. You can get it on Steam. It should, at least if it's on sale, it should be something like $5. And it's from Shenandoah Studios. So Eric Lee Smith was involved as one of the principals at Shenandoah Studios. So I haven't played the board game version, but I have played the computer game version, and I liked it. I might even have a video of it on the digital channel. Siege topics. So there's been a recent little of interest in Siege as a topic in recent years. We've got that Siege of Mantua. There's a Siege of Malta game that came out in the last couple of years, and there's a couple other ones. So that's interesting. Now, I, of course, as my selection for this topic, I have procured, thanks to the supporters of the channel, a copy of The Art of Siege from SPI. So I will be examining that. I will, by the way, or at least I intend to, we'll see, sometime in the next 2 shows, which again, no live shows next week. There might be videos, but there will not be live shows. I will have kind of a plan, like a content plan for 2025, right? It's not going to be incredibly ambitious because I have a fairly clear eye on what I think I can actually get done. Mike says there's half a dozen games on Hui. I'm not sure I could think of that many. I know there's a couple other than the one I was thinking of. Mo from Mo's Game Table is here. David Garvin says he played the original NATO hundreds of times. I'm trying to motor through the chat here because S&T did one. And the Vietnam, very good. Vietnam setting in Fields of Fire Volume 2 is Hui as well. That's cool. I agree. I have a pretty high opinion of the new NATO from Bruce and Compass. I have not really looked at Air and Armor other than the physical components, however, which I saw at Compass Expo and which are nice. So, all right. So Joe Green says the old SPI NATO game is the one that has the joke about you setting your map on fire when the nukes go off. Yeah, I haven't actually tried to run this down personally. There are several games that people say this about, and I think there's probably only one that's actually in. Mark Herman says that Red Sun Rising is a Frank Davis design. Mark was the developer. And that was the Russo-Japanese war game, correct? I think that was. I agree with it. Well, I don't know about either game. So, all right. So Jeff Bueller's talking about Richard Berg's game Manchu, which was an S&T game published, I think, in the Decision era. It might have been 3W, might even have been TSR, but I think it was Decision. It's reasonably difficult to obtain. However, it was redone, presumably by Richard Berg, as a game from Kuroniko Games, which is a Hong Kong wargame publisher. You can get it from GMT, last I looked for it, which might not be up to date now. It is called The Dragon and the Cross, and this is about the Taiping Rebellion, which is another very interesting East Asian wargaming topic topic in general that we do not have very many games about. So these are two separate. Kevin Featherly, somebody might have said this already. These are two separate things. There was an early GMT game about it, the invasion of Norway, but more recently, much more recently, there was also a PQ-17 Norway 1940 expansion. I have the PQ-17 expansion. PQ-17 is pretty neat. It was one of the early things that I picked up when I got back into wargaming. I forget where I saw stuff about it. I'm like, ooh, this sounds cool. And it is pretty cool. The rulebook's not the greatest rulebook, but there's some really neat stuff in there mechanically. Yes, this is incredibly common, in fact. So, The historical game, good catch, Henry Mike. The historical game company has done several of these things, and I think the Siege of Tenochtitlan is one of the ones. I know I didn't pronounce that correctly, but I don't care. I'm from Ohio. Pronunciation is optical. Battles Magazine did a Hue game. Is Battles Magazine still being published? That is the question I hear most often about Battles Magazine. Yes. So Mandarin Mike, I think, might mention this. It is Manchu. Yeah. Gregory Campagna mentions Assault on Sevastopol by Victory Point Games. That's not one that I've looked at. Oh, that's interesting. That it was Berg's dissertation. That's neat. There is, trying to remember exactly where this is. There is an optional Harry Flashman rule in 3 Days at Gettysburg. So, Dragon of the Cross, the one I have, I got mine from Enterprise Games, and they may well have obtained it from GMT because they're GMT's partner in for certain conventions. And my copy came with English rules, so I'm covered, even though I do not read Chinese or Japanese. Not that there would be Japanese in the game, but it was not, after all, published by a Japanese publisher. It's published by a Chinese publisher. There is a Chinese wargaming scene, folks. We don't have a lot of visibility on it here, but there is a Chinese wargaming scene. It's not limited to Hong Kong, but I know it's there in Hong Kong. So, because Hong Kong is a little less behind a big wall than the rest of China is, if you know what I'm saying. All right, we are actually caught up on the chat. So cool. I am, in fact, caught up on the chat. How about that? I was really struggling there for a minute when I was like, it starts to get over 20 minutes behind, and then I'll say something, and then I'll look down in the chat, and then someone else will have said that 27 minutes ago already. Oh, excellent. Yeah, Japanese is difficult. Chinese is too, to learn for different reasons, though. Japanese, to me, I've read a piece about the structure of the Japanese language and the grammar and stuff like that. And to me, Japanese doesn't seem that complicated from like a learning the language standpoint, but learning the writing system is insane. So, really? Carl, do you have any, if Carl's still here, do you have any insight on this? This would be super duper interesting, actually. And I know that that there are some folks over there playing OCS games too. So, of course, I guess I could ask Tony when I see Tony in 2 months. So there's that too. So there are 4 different scripts used to write Japanese. That's the problem. One of them is Romanji, which is the Latin alphabet. Which you see on signs and stuff like that. But you've got kanji, which is a subset of Chinese characters. You've got hiragana and katakana, which are 2 different syllableries that are used for different things to write Japanese. It's super confusing. So, interesting. I didn't realize. Well, Joe has done a lot of games on a lot of things, so there's that. Oh, that's awesome. I think that's great. So I assume who Carl, do you know who the Chinese partner company is? I would be curious. Oh, well, if Tony, I'm off of Twitter. I'm off of Twitter. I've deleted the account. You will not see me on Twitter again. Anybody needs to get a hold of me, there's a million ways to get a hold of me. So, oh, and Pacific War as well. That's neat. Cool. So I can always ask Tony. I've got ways to get a hold of Tony if I need to know. I'm more curious than anything else. So I think that's fantastic. I would love to see more of our games be available in non-English speaking countries, and more of their games to be made available in English speaking countries in general. There's a whole bunch of really good Japanese designers. There's probably really good Chinese designers too. I just have only heard of 2 of them because those are the games that I have. So All right. I don't want to get into this. I am off of Twitter, and I'm going to leave it at that. Let's not go into why we all left Twitter. So I leave that to your individual discretion. And if you are still on Twitter, I am not going to be mad at you. That's fine. I made a decision for me. You make the decision for you. We are presumably all grown-ups here. Rawstone Games. I have never heard of that. So, never heard of them. Good to know, though. I will make a note of that. This might be a little touchy. I imagine that's not one that they might see immediately. Although I would imagine that the Chinese army has copies of it already, just in case. Yes, Mitch in Maine. There's Drive on Washington, which until literally 2 days ago was sitting on the shelf behind me, from SPI in the early BACW series, and in the Line of Battle series, we have To Take Washington. So there are at least 2 games about the Battle of Monocacy Junction. So, ooh, I wonder if they're going to do Case Blue. That'd be awesome. Well, we do see this, and MMP has made a pretty cool effort, I think, to bring some Japanese games to the American market. They're not the only people to do that, but I mean, 3W did it on at least one occasion. Well, yes, yeah, that's fair. But in this case, for Third Winter, it's going to be Tony's. It's Tony's game, so presumably he knows about that one at least. So I could get a hold of either of you should it become necessary. So, and yeah, now Carl, you're in charge of the whole thing. So pretty much, not the whole thing, but looks a lot like the whole thing to me. Yeah, and Vuka's bringing some Japanese games to us as well. So. We are emphatically underaware of games that are available in non-English languages. As a community, we are not as aware of them as we should be. The irony is that in at least some cases, perhaps many cases, those games have English rules. They're prepared to sell them here. You can get them from Noble Knight. A lot of those European publishers, for example, will end up working something out with Noble Knight. I forget who. Nuts Publishing has an arrangement with Noble Knight to make sure that they carry their games, for example. So, Brusilov Offensive. Well, there is a game called the Brusilov Offensive. I'm not sure I remember who published that. Was it SPI? It might have been. There are other games that include it. If you anybody wants a good World War I East Front recommendation, there's a couple different versions of When Eagles Fight, which I have some video on. Oh, I screwed the rules up fairly badly, but oh yeah, that's true. GMT carries Hexasim and Shakos, and I think Vevictus. You could do Brusilov and Der Weltkrieg too. Yeah. I have no idea what shipping to China looks like. You never know, but for us to ship to China is probably expensive. Oh yeah, okay. It's in Great War in the East. Very good. That makes complete sense to me. We've got about 25 minutes. You could also do it in Where Eagles Fight, which if you don't want a big game or complicated game, maybe that's something to look for. But the game Stigler's talking about here, it's in an SPI quad. It's also going to be fairly easy to play. Let's put it that way. I have this. I am pretty impressed with this, as well as with Stalingrad Roads, for the record. So, do I have anything else from Nuts? No, I really wanted to play We Are Coming Nineveh, and it just didn't happen at SD Hists for whatever reason. It is very... So, on our list... Where is it? There we go. Currently, nobody has made a final decision yet, but at the top of our current list for Winterfest is Der Weltkrieg. We'll see. What we do depends strongly on how many players we have. If we have 4 players, I think we will do East Front. So, Yeah, so remember that sometimes it's expensive for us to ship to some particular destination, and it's not nearly as expensive for that destination country to ship to the US. I've run into this with Cube for Me, for example, which is in Poland. It's not particularly expensive. It's roughly what the post office would charge you, maybe a little less. So I don't have the previous games. We did this. We did this actually. There is a several months ago. Check back in the channel history under live. You'll see it. We actually did a show on I'm not sure if it was European publishers. It's counterclipping episode 181. So, European wargame publishers. There are, of course, Asian wargame publishers as well, and presumably some, and a couple Australian ones, and presumably something elsewhere as well. And I did have an interview with Laurent from Nuts Publishing not too long ago too. Oh, I got to stop doing that, man. I always say that when it comes up. I slip, and I keep getting Nuts and Hexasim mixed up. Very embarrassing. Ooh, nice. I'm pretty impressed with what Vuk is doing, to be frank. And I've got this now, so I can't wait to play this. I've seen this. Was it Japanese or was that Chinese? I don't remember. I have actually seen this. So yeah, that show actually did quite well too. So as I recall, not that great. So yeah, go ahead and watch it. Share it around if you want. I feel like that was a cool show that we did. So, Nomenhan, this is not something I've looked into, to be honest. I've even looked into Tsushima in terms of what games were done on it. But Nomenhan, no, I've never really looked at that. Yeah, so here's my concern with this. Now, on the one hand, I like coin games. I don't like every coin game. We did cover Tactica e Strategia when we did the European War Games show, and they got a lot of output too. So on the one hand, there are plenty of coin games that I do like and own, and I had China's War on pre-order at one point, and I canceled that. I think as a general cleanup, rather than I decided not to buy it. I will still check it out when it comes out. However, I have concerns about making that situation work using the coin standard methodology. Now, on the other hand, there are designers who don't hesitate to break with the standard coin methodology, and the designer in this case is Brian Train. And Brian knows what he is doing, so I do have some confidence that that will be a good game. I do not currently have it on pre-order, but I will be looking at it when it is available. All right, Joseph Syverson is looking forward to Der Weltkrieg. I've played Der Weltkrieg already. We played Tannenberg a few years ago, and I liked it. It's considerably more... I got another weird one with some tear out. It's considerably more straightforward than I expected it to be, which is cool. Now, we'll be playing... We're not going to... Well, we would consider the Grand Campaign, but realistically, we would need probably at least 6 and probably 8 people to do it, and we're not going to have that many people. So we're looking... probably going to be East Front or West Front, to be honest about it. So I'm more interested in East Front. Even if we only have 3 people, I can live with East Front. That does mean that the Central Powers player will need to handle both the Germans and the Austrians, where we would split the Russians. So, and there's a ton of Weltkrieg content on YouTube too. Thank you, Nengwaya. So I don't know if it's all the rage, but there definitely has been a post Paths of Glory renaissance in World War I as a war game topic. That is a topic that very few designers touched between the year Guns of August came out and the year Paths of Glory came out. Not nobody, but it was not popular. And Paths of Glory showed folks that you can, in fact, design a super duper engaging game on World War One. So, and you know, it is an all-time classic. So, since then, we have seen a lot more World War One games. Devil Dogs from John Paniski. John Paniski's a really interesting designer. I'd like to get him on the Chit Show, actually. Incidentally, the Chit Show is probably switching nights starting next year. Probably moving to Thursday. I got to iron out the details of that with Dan. World War One. Yeah, so the World War One game is a Dunnigan design, and it's a brilliant design. Very clever, very innovative game. And that has had a pretty long life too. It was done by SPI in at least 4 different formats, and then it was redone by Decision not too terribly long ago. So if you pick up that World War One game from Decision, the box thing that they have available now, then you will in fact be buying the original Dunnigan game, and it is also a classic. I want to say that might not have been before Guns of August, actually. I thought it was, but I have this idea in my head that particular game was earlier than it was. It was like 75 or 76, as I recall, is the actual date. And I don't remember the date when Guns of August came out. So, but there's also Dunnigan's also 1914, which is another game that maybe not the most fun game to play, but it again has some really innovative mechanics in it for its day, and that is a super duper early game. There we go. So the World War One is earlier than Guns of August because Frank. Oh yeah, okay, I didn't think of that. And yes, because, and I know that because I could have worked that out because I don't remember whether it was the issue before or the issue after was Frederick the Great. So super interesting game. Callendale has some video on that Dunnigan World War One game. Now, whether you think it holds up today or not, I don't know that because I haven't played it. I don't know that I have a particularly strong opinion on it, but I can tell you that it was very clever and innovative at the time. No, if I ever am ever in the same room as John Paniski, this includes if we ever get him on the show, which we have made no effort to do thus far. It's just a great idea. I will ask him about Black Eagles, which is the game about the Haitian Revolution that has been advertised for several years now and which is not yet out. I am all over that if it does in fact come out from whoever. If you're playing the whole thing, then yes, I agree with this statement. You really kind of have to put that all together. There might be some play aids for it that folks have done, but I have not checked. But if you're just playing one boxed game, which I think is what we are likely to do, then I don't think we're too worried about that. Somebody did do this actually, or it's a scenario for another game. I have heard this idea floated. Somebody did it somewhere. Was all right, Mitch and Maine, thanks for stopping by. Let's check something here. Brave Little Belgium is, yeah, it is alternate. It is World War One. I don't know why I have that mixed up. It's the Netherlands that they did not invade in World War One, not Belgium. That was, in fact, the entire British excuse for getting into war in the first place. Excuse, noticed I said. They were going to join one way or the other. I do not buy the idea that if the Germans don't go through Belgium, that the British just stay neutral. That's very unlikely. The Schleswig Wars. These were not super competitive, as I recall, however. So now there is 1866. What's this called? From Compass. I forget who the designer is, but it's a Paths of Glory style CDG. It's called 1866: The Struggle for Supremacy in Germany. I have that, and that may include the Second Schleswig War as well, because that's the kind of thing that kicked off that Austro-Prussian War, which is the actual title of the or actual topic of the game. John Fearer, very good, thank you, Mo. Who's also done some fairly interesting stuff. I believe he did one or more of the No Peace Without Spain series games. I'm not sure if you used your face to type this on your keypad, E4 Airman. The Cossacks are coming. When I hear that title, the game I'm thinking of is the one from People's Wargames. Tannenberg campaign. Okay, very good, very good. That is the Cossacks are coming from People's Wargames. Yes, indeed it is. Tannenberg's had a fair amount of traffic on it. There's, of course, the SPI Tannenberg, which is, I forget whether it was the fifth wheel of the Great War in the East Quad or if it's actually just in the Great War in the East Quad. Pretty sure it was a fifth wheel because it was actually in SPI. So I'll point out that the Battle of Sekigahara in GBOH is, as I recall, one of the largest battles in the entire series. So, and I forget which volume that's in, whether it's in Ron or Samurai. I've got both of them, so. And I haven't played either one. The only GBOH stuff I have played is like the ancient Roman and Greek stuff, which I'd like to fix, but because I have the whole series now, including Lion of the North, which I think you could probably get. I think you're probably better off doing that topic in Musket and Pike nowadays, but it was a valiant effort, and I think I had to have it because it was like the only thing in the series that I didn't have. So, Ijan Tichy would like to see Hexasim do Nagashino. I'll tell you what, if you look at that Tenko, whatever that thing was called, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this is it. Let me pull this up. So this is the game that we were talking about here. And it's called, let me pull this down, Tenkatoitsu, and it's in a sort of weird-shaped box, which Hexasim does do some of the time. But I'll tell you what, man, these are gorgeous pieces. The map's nice, too. Some people don't like the Caltrop-style hexes. Personally, that doesn't particularly bother. It's not my preference, but I don't care. Gorgeous, gorgeous pieces. As Hexasim tends to do. Hexasim has really nice production values. So, yeah, if they were to re-implement... Ooh, this is interesting. So, apparently, this implements this earlier Hexasim game, Kawanakajima? That's probably not right. I don't know if these are these actually don't look bad either. So similar system. So if you're looking for Sengoku Jidai topic, or at least feudal Japan topic, that's a little broader than Sengoku period. This is one that I would 100% look at. This is not a particular interest of mine. I've got the GBOH games. I think I'm pretty good on this topic. And Sekigahara is in Samurai, as Freddie Salvian mentioned. I can't keep the two straight because I've never played either of them. So had I played them, I would probably remember that. Games on individual Oh, so actually, it's interesting you should mention this. You should take a look at, it's Naval. You should take a look at A Glorious Chance, released in the last couple of years from Legion Wargames and designed by Gina Willis. It is the Battle of Lake Ontario in the War of 1812. Oh no, I never got to this. I also don't have the original Avalon Hill version either, and I don't really want it, to be honest. I mean, I've got the GBOH version. It is a fascinating battle. There's no doubt about that. But and the Avalon Hill game is well regarded, but I don't really see. I don't need to run it down. It's there's other stuff that's a higher priority than that. Scott Rowland, thanks for stopping by. So yeah, some people don't like the caltrops as they are sometimes called. I might object to them less because there were certain role-playing games that use a hex grid, like GURPS, where the published maps always had the caltrop style hex grid. Again, it's not my preference. I'd rather just have hexes. However, it doesn't really bug me either. So I've got a number of like comparison type videos that I'd like to do, and I've never gotten to any of them. So we'll see. And yeah, this is true. So my understanding though is that Elysia game that was on Kickstarter is a reimagining of the Avalon Hill Elysia game. I don't believe it to be the same game based on, because I did not back it, but I did take a look at it, and based on what I was reading, it sounded like it was going to be its own thing. So I cannot say that for me the caltrop hex grid is a factor in either direction. Do I like it? Not really, but I just don't care that much. So it's if it's a war game and has hexagons on it, I'm happy. So For Honor and Glory by Worthington covers 1812 battles. I think, have I ever played? I'll tell you what, I have seen metal D4s, the pyramid D4s, with like razor sharp points on them. Like, man, what are you people thinking to design these dice like this and make them out of metal? That's nutty. So I cannot speak to any of the Rand stuff. Robert Maxey, this is a really good question, and he's asking about, we do talk a lot about republishing SPI, Avalon Hill Victory Games, GDW, stuff like that. But what about the games from Rand? They were really one of the only people doing board war games back in the 60s with Avalon Hill. I realize that SPI got started in the late 60s as well, but it was that. I think there's a perception, at least, that, now I don't know how true this is, that those were not really commercial games, that those were intended more for professional use and professional analysts and stuff like that. I think there is an unexamined assumption to that effect. So, few games for wars on South American independence. This would be another good topic, actually, is some of these wars of South American independence. I would be potentially intrigued by that. Now there's Under the Southern Cross for Flying Colors, which is naval battles from some of those conflicts. Although that's not really the wars of independence. That's later South American conflicts between the newly independent countries in South America. So I would like to see somebody who has some experience with those games talk about this. I don't. I have never physically seen, to my best of my recollection, anything from Rand. So that's not to say that it doesn't come up in conversation from time to time, or I'll stumble across something on BGG or something like that, and I'll say, "Oh, this looks potentially intriguing." But I don't know anything about the company. I don't know who designed for them. I mean, I know something about the company, but I don't really have the context to supply why they did board war games, right? Or what their methodologies were. So Mark might know a fair amount about that. So I would be quite shocked had Mark not had extensive conversations with those folks. So I wouldn't even know who to talk to, right? if I was to say, hey, let's get somebody from Rand on the show, I mean, could I figure it out? Maybe, yeah, but yeah, there you go. There you go. Somebody mentioned that Nafi, and I know Prados had done at least one or two for them. And I think Mark mentioned earlier that Al Nafi had done one as well. So, or Nofi. Mark, I think it's Nofi. I think. So, my apologies to Al if I'm getting that wrong. This is possible, yeah. I think this is possible. Legion has some interesting stuff in the development pipeline. Various stages of the development pipeline. So potentially, yeah. This is they probably are in possession of substantial government secrets. So, all right, folks, there will be an unboxing video this week on Thursday. That game will be, and it's perfectly appropriate that I have Stigler up when I make this announcement, Decision Games' new version of Operation Typhoon, which looks pretty impressive. So do check out that video. I'm not sure anything else will come out this week. Depends what I get done. If I get, I need to do a book review video, which is just going to be me talking for 5 minutes. Those videos are short and quick. But I'm still kind of thinking about how I feel about the book that I just read. So, fantastic. That is, in fact, the reaction I was fishing for. Thank you, Alan. So there we go. So we can take a good ribbing here, folks. It's not all bans and block lists and stuff like that. So, yeah, so this has been a good show. I think we talked about a lot of interesting topics, and we didn't dwell too much on the super duper popular topics that we all knew were super duper popular topics, right? And we got into, there you go. Yeah, I'd love to play this again. We did this back in the 90s, and I liked it at the time. I don't know that I would have... I don't know that I'd have the same opinion about it now, but I do have the game. So at some point, I want to get this East Front thing back to the table. So, Festivus time. My mom does not understand why people are doing Festivus. She has no idea. If I didn't mention this last week, my mother fell, who is in her 70s, mid 70s, she fell and broke her arm right up here on the right arm in the last weekend before last, and she's in a lot of pain right now, and so she's doing okay, but it's a mess. So I wouldn't. I think there is a plan to do this. I don't think there's nothing on like P500 yet. So I think she'll be fine. She's certainly complaining a lot about how much it hurts, which is understandable, of course. And yeah, this is a good point. You'd rather break an arm than a hip. I mean, it is a break of the arm and not the shoulder or the clavicle or something like that. Those things tend to get super duper messy. So, but my sister and her husband, and they will be going up for a Festivus celebration to visit his family. But the reason why they do this is because those people are all somewhere else at Christmas. So it's kind of just a bonus Christmas. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we're all hoping she mends well. I don't know. She's been to the orthopedic doctor already. They took more X-rays. They told her that as long as she doesn't wreck it by trying to do something stupid like making dinner, that she should be able to take the sling off in like January. So if it heals well, so hopefully not. The feats of strength. I was not really super duper into Seinfeld, I got to tell you. There are certainly some funny episodes of it. I have seen a couple episodes that were funny, and a couple that I was like, it's okay. I'm not a comedies guy. I don't really watch a lot of comedies. I never like go out of my way to watch comedies, unless my wife wants to watch a comedy. Then I will watch a comedy. Unless it's Monty Python, then that's a little different. All right, folks, we are pretty much out of time, so we're going to can it here. I would like to thank everybody for coming out this evening. I would like to thank the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, as well as our good friends at Noble Knight Games. Everybody have a great rest of the week, and remember, there will be no live shows next week, because next week is Christmas, and that would be grievously inconvenient for everybody involved. But we will be back the following week, that last week in December. So our last show of the year will in fact be December 30th, and the next counterclipping show. So I'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Everybody have a Merry Christmas or other holiday, whichever holidays you intend to celebrate this season. Everybody have a great one, and I will see you all again soon.